So, folks, even though I'm a writer, I think I'm a better talker when it comes to answering questions. So, what I'm doing, or when somebody asks me a question that I think I can do a better job, I'll make a video. All right. So, I got a message, and here's a weird thing: is I have a contact form. So I started this website last year, davidsoderwrites.com, and I've had a contact form, and I'm like, contact me. I'll answer any questions. Right. Well, because I'm hoping somebody contacts me through my website, I started looking into it, and it turns out I wasn't set up for notifications for almost 8 months that I've had this website. Somebody could have uh, contacted me, like I'm telling, contact me, and I would have never known because I was waiting for a notification to come. I just so happened to look and saw two notifications from people. One January of last month or 19th of last month, and the other one like the 23rd of last month, something like that. So um, I already handled one of the emails, and I'm about to handle the other one, and I'll read to you what I got. It says, "Hey David, my name is Lola. I recently came across a bookmark left upon a coffee shop table. I wish I knew Lola, which coffee shop? Because I'm curious. I always leave those things around and I hand them to people, and I really don't know if anybody. Well, one person now. Now I know of one person. It had on the back your blog's address. Needless to say, I became curious and decided to visit. I'd love to begin reading your works, though I have a question. Where did you get your inspiration to write fiction? I'd love to get started myself, and I'm fortunate to have someone in my life who has a passion for writing, but I have no idea where to begin. It seems so daunting writing an entire novel. I'd love to know how and where you got your inspiration. Yours truly, Lola." Well, Lola, I have a story for you. Let me see if I can answer. Kind of have two questions in there. Let me see if I can answer it. So I had this whole moniker of Primitive Dave. I was a health and weight loss guru, or was trying to be one. Trying to be the primitive guy. My name is Primitive Dave. And so I wrote books about primitive eating. I wrote some books specific to certain audiences that had to do with health and weight loss, and even passing your PT test. I wrote a book called Pass Your PT Test for the Air Force Fitness Assessment. And so I had some experience writing books. To learn to sell more books, I started listening to uh, the self-publishing podcast. Which I highly recommend. If you want to be a writer, that's one of the things I would definitely recommend that you listen to is self-publishing podcast. If you want to be, yeah, if you want to sell books, if you want to publish yourself and sell books, I highly recommend. It's once a week. It's pretty good. In it, while listening to them, along with listening to audiobooks about publishing. I wrote a book called Write, Publish, Repeat. Actually, I highly recommend that too. Write, Publish, Repeat. Excellent book on if you're interested in marketing your book and selling books. If you're going to be an author, don't forget that you're also going to be a entrepreneur and a business person. Um, Between the podcast and that book, they kept talking about On Writing by Stephen King and how good of a book it was. I listen to audiobooks. I get 2 audiobooks a month, and if they're cheap enough, I'll buy a third. So I didn't waste any time, and I got Stephen King's book On Writing, the best audiobook next to not Shackleton. It is next to it's not Everest. Endurance, the story of Ernest Shackleton's voyage across the Atlantic. That is the best audiobook ever. Seriously, it's got to be the best audio. Number 2 is On Writing by Stephen King. Even if you don't want to be a writer, it is an entertaining. It's autobiographical. and it's so entertaining. And I was like, why is this? How does this guy know what Stephen King's grandma or aunt talked like back then? And I found out it's Stephen King. He actually reads the book, is the narrator, and so it's just a great book. That book led me to start writing fiction. I had a story. I used to be really into movies. Uh, Quentin Tarantino was kind of my hero, maybe still is. Uh, so I thought someday I'd be writing scripts, and I had an ending to a movie from 20 something years ago. It's always been in my head, always been in my head. And I thought, why don't I put a middle and a beginning to this story? And so I thought about it, and I swear that I had to press pause on Stephen King's book so that I can get my laptop out in the van here and start writing that story. And I thought it'll just be a short story. I'll just make it a short story. I'm the primitive guy. I write health and wellness books. I'm not gonna write a fiction, but I'm gonna practice my trade. I'm an author. I can write. I'm gonna practice. I'm gonna get as much practice as I can writing. So I started writing it. And the more I listened to Stephen King, the more I was deciding to. The more I listened to finish that book, and I kept listening to self-publishing podcasts, and I was just like, you know what? Why don't I just write a novel, or why don't I just why don't I write more than this? The thing is that all these authors tell you is you have to write every day, and I wasn't writing every day. At least I wasn't writing fiction. So I created the website David Soda Writes, and I told people like, listen, I'm going to publish an article, a chapter of my novel a week. Who knows how long it's going to take? By the time I'm done, I'll have a novel, and I can just copy it and publish it. That's what oh, that's what Andy Weir did uh, with The Martian. I guess he was publishing it, and he had a big following, and they said, hey, can we have this all in one? Can you put this in a book? And he said, sure. And he made a book, and he made The Martian, and look where he is now. So I decided that's what I was going to do. The biggest reason I decided to do that was not because that's what Andy Weir did, but it's because it was holding me accountable. I would have to produce a chapter a week, which meant I was going to have to write almost every day. And it worked. For 22 weeks straight, I published a chapter. Um, but then something happened. Because of On Writing by Stephen King, I started reading more books, fiction, more stories, more novels, reading more and more. Because he said that in order to be a good writer, you have to be a good reader. So you have to read, 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 read. And he says he takes every opportunity he can to read. If he's waiting in line at Burger King or something, he's reading. So I gave up reading nonfiction. So I still have some nonfiction books on my shelf back here that I bought, and then decided I'm not going to read nonfiction anymore. I'm only going to read fiction, novels, or stories. And that's why a lot of my audiobooks are nonfiction. I listen to nonfiction, but I read fiction. So I was reading, 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 always going to bookstores, always trading, buying books, selling books back, reading them. And then I came across the Milagro Beanfield War, which I love. It came out in the 80s, and I was a kid, and I just love this story about how these Mexican Americans, bonded together and fought against a rich real estate developer and the local government. And my favorite part about my favorite part about the movie was Amarante, the old sheriff who talked to Joe Mondragon's dead father. And I love that part about it. And I even took a line from that movie and put it in my book. Because the movie he goes Amarante. Joe Mondragon goes, Amarante, my father's been dead for years. Because Amarante says, oh, I spoke to your father this morning. He's Amarante, my father's been dead for years. And Amarante says, yes, I know. And I love that. I love that. And so when I saw that book, I'm like, oh, I'm going to read this book. And I bought that book, and I started buying books that were movies that I've seen that I love, because I've always been a movie guy. And I bought like Chocolat, I bought like Water for Chocolate, I bought Big Fish, I bought um, not Fight Club, though I read that one too. I bought all these books that had this style in the movies that I liked, and I started reading them. Well, John Nichols' Milagro Beanfield War just inspired me, and it reminded me that I love magical realism. I love this little bit of fantasy that takes place in real life. Um, and I have read in years past Gabriel Garcia Marquez, which is where I discovered the term magical realism. So from that point on, I was like, I'm gonna read more magical realism. I love it, and so I bought a Gabriel Garcia Marquez book, and I think that's when I started buying Big Fish and Chocolat and those other books too. And then reading Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Leaf Storm, I couldn't concentrate because I was so inspired that there was this woman in my mind, this beautiful, beautiful, sexy, almost so sexy it's obscene the way she dresses, um, who had these chocolates that made people want to make love. Like, so if you, I don't want to give too much away, but uh, say you're an older woman and you and your, or there's an older woman, elderly couple, and they've kind of haven't made love in years. If they eat these chocolates, then the sparks come. And I couldn't stop thinking and getting all these ideas, and I'm trying to read this Leaf Storm, and I can't. It's hard, and I'm like, he's one of my favorite authors, but I can't even finish, and I force my way through it.